Good afternoon. I'm Jeff Jenkins, and I'm joined today by my brother Dale. We'd like to welcome you to the Jenkins Institute Help Desk. This is a broadcast where we answer ministry questions that are emailed to us or sent in by ministers around the world, and we're delighted that you've joined us today. Dale, it's good to see you.
Jeff, it's great to be with you today, and this is always a lot of fun to get together and get to do this. We've got some really good questions today. I want to say up front, if you have any questions that you'd like for us to deal with on Help Desk, send them to the Jenkins Institute at gmail.com. But Jeff, before we get into a few questions today, let's talk about a couple of things that we have coming up right away. We had a couple of, go ahead.
Well, we got a couple of better preaching conferences coming up. First one will be in Dixon, Tennessee in September. Tell us a little bit about that, Dale.
That one is September the 14th and 15th, and that's right away. And we'd like for people to come to that. Obviously, if you're in this part of the country, it's worth the trip. We have lodging we'll help you provide. We'll help provide you if you need that. The cost is $25. If you'd rather not pay $25 or can't afford $25, we'll try to figure out how to get you in. We would like for you to be there. And that is September the 14th and 15th. And Jeff, that's a Monday to Tuesday. We start at 1 o'clock on Monday, end at noon on Tuesday. And you tell about Texas, if you will.
Well, the next one will be just less than a month after that. It'll be October the 5th and 6th. We'll start again at 1 o'clock on Monday, October the 5th, end at noon on Tuesday, October the 6th, be held at the Louisville Church of Christ building. And you can register for either one of these in the same location. The cost is the same. We believe we have outstanding speakers lined up. There'll be a great group of people. Not only is it a great time of learning, but it's also a great opportunity for fellowship for preachers. And that's maybe one of the things we enjoy most about it.
Yeah, we have a great time together, and we interview these folks that we bring in, the guests, and you get to ask them questions. It's, as we say, it's a lot of fun. But the idea is I want to preach better. And is there anywhere I can go to help me actually be better at the art of preaching? And that's what this is designed to do. And folks that have been have always enjoyed it. If you want to know more or to register for either of them, go to www.preachbetter.com. And that'll get you in, and we'll do everything we can to help you. If you have any questions, send those to the Jenkins Institute at gmail.com, and we'll answer any questions that you have about the Better Conference. Jeff, let's get busy with some questions today.
Hey, before we start on the question, one more thing. I want to tell you happy birthday.
Oh, yeah, well, that's kind of big, isn't it?
I remember that day 51 years ago when you were born.
Yeah, that was a fun day for me. I remember it well.
Me too. I remember it.
Yeah. And hey, do we want to tell about what we hope to have at the Better Conference? Do we want to tell about the new thing we're going to have?
I think we better hold off on that.
Okay.
Number one, let's build some anticipation. Number two, let's make sure we have it.
Okay, all right. We won't say anything about it then. But we got something exciting in the Better Conference that's really going to be maybe the neatest thing we've done, Jeff, as far as what we've been able to be part of. So, okay, let's get busy with the questions. You go ahead with the first one.
All right, Dale, this question says, how long do you stay?
Oh, wait, Jeff, you didn't do that right. You're supposed to say a caller from Texas is called in.
Okay, this was emailed actually from San Antonio, Texas, I think. And the questioner asked this following question. How long do you stay at a congregation, even if you're not clicking with all of the congregation? This questioner goes on to say, the group of folks that I work with most have slowly lost interest in coming to events. I'm trying to change the dynamics and focus more. It seems like there's more of a focus on other things than church activities. I feel like it may be time for me to step aside from this congregation before I run everything into the ground. So I think, the idea is how long should you stay at a congregation if you don't feel like that the fit is proper, you're not clicking?
I always think it's a good thing to leave when they stop paying you.
Yes, that would be a good time. Yes.
But that's probably not the best answer. Go ahead, Jeff. Give some of your good wisdom on this.
Well, I don't know if I have any good wisdom. It's always difficult to know. Dale, I remember Dad saying, you ought to stay at a church as long as you feel like you're being effective there. And oftentimes, as preachers, we pray, Lord, help me to be where I can be most effective in your work. I've thought that's unusual when a preacher says, my prayer is that I'll always stay where I'm more effective, and then somebody calls them and they ignore the call. That doesn't seem to make sense if you're asking the Lord to help you with that. But I think it's a difficult reality to try to figure out how long is too long, how long is not long enough. And I think we don't want to overstay our welcome. We don't want to overstay our effectiveness. But one thought is we may not always be the one who is the best judge of whether or not we've lost our effectiveness. We need to get input from other people who hopefully will be honest with us about it.
Yeah, the average stay of a preacher today is 3 years and 1 month. That's church-wide. That's not just Church of Christ. And most studies say ministers do their best work between years 5 and 7 in a stay at a place. I don't know that either of those tell us a whole lot about this. I think the last thing you said, Jeff, is one of the real keys to try to get input from other people. I think sometimes we can give up on a work too quickly if we're not careful. And, we ought to ask and poll the audience, so to speak, what can we do better? How can we improve? Are there things that we're doing that are not working? Sometimes what we perceive and what is reality are really dramatically different things, aren't they?
Some people, it seems like some preachers, the first time they have conflict, the first time a big event they've planned doesn't go the way they wanted it to, they start looking around and say, well, it's not working here. I need to find somewhere else. And so that's, again, where we need to have input from other people. Hopefully your wife will be honest with you. Your family will tell you that, you're losing your effectiveness. You're not being able to help the church. And I think another thing to think about is we all go through seasons where maybe we're not our best. Maybe things are not going the way that we feel like they should. But again, you don't want to jump out too soon. If that season becomes a prolonged season over a number of, over a year or 2 years or something like that, then it may be a problem. But if it's a temporary season that you're going through, I don't think you necessarily have to jump ship like that.
Jeff, would it be unwise for a guy to sit down with his elders, if he's got elders in his congregation, and say, listen, I don't feel like things are going real well. Don't be a drama queen and do that every 3 weeks or so. But, I don't feel, how do you feel? And if we came to an agreement and understanding between an elder and a minister's, eldership and minister, where we said, let's be honest with each other and help each other out in this endeavor. I want to do my best work, and you want this church to be at its very best. If you think time has come for me to go, let's work through this together. And if you think I'm not effective, rather than you fire me or me just run off the first place I find, let's figure out a way to work through this for the best of the body and of the minister, and try to work through it that way.
Well, I think ideally that would be a great situation. Number one, you would have to have elders who you put your trust in, and that they are doing what is best for the church. Sometimes elders, they say, I don't want to hurt his feelings. I don't want to make him feel bad, so we won't tell him, even though we may feel like he really needs to go on. And then the other part of that is, as a preacher, I've got to mean that if I'm going to approach my elders and say, you be honest with me and tell me if it's time for me to leave, and then they are honest with me and they believe it's time for me to leave and tell me, and then I get all upset and say they ran me off. So yeah, ideally that would be a great thing if the preacher means it and if the elders are honest about it,
But that doesn't always exist, and we're aware of that. And there's some caustic situations that sometimes do occur. So you better be careful about doing that, I would guess would be maybe the advice there.
One other thought to me on that would be to have, I think that preachers need to have some strong relationships with other preachers.
Yes.
And it would be wise, it is wise if a preacher has another preacher or even a group of preachers that he trusts who know him and who know the situation where he is. They may not know everything about it, but they may generally know about that church and know about the situation, who can say, look, things aren't working out here. You need to move on, or things are better than you believe they are, and you need to stay here and work through this.
I've experienced this before, and I've been through this, and you can work through it. It's not that bad. Or oftentimes, I know guys that I know, it's like, listen, everybody, your wife knows it, your kids know it, the elders know it, the church knows it, everybody knows you're leaving. You need to go ahead and just get ready to leave rather than wait till you're fired. A good voice can help us there a whole lot.
And we need to be careful that we don't set standards for ourselves that we can't meet. Think about our dad staying 43 years in a church. That's very unusual in churches. That's a lot more than 3 years and 1 month. Some people are just built to where their psyche and their makeup and their personality, they may work 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years max with a church and need to move on. No shame in that. I don't believe there's any shame in that. Some guys say, I'm going to stay 20 years and I'm determined to stay 20 years, and they don't need to stay 20 years, Some guys, they hit a wall at a certain time and they say, well, I've got to prove that I can stay here 20 years, so I'm going to do it, and it could cause great damage to the body.
And moving's not a bad thing. Sometimes it re-energizes us, and it does as much good for us sometimes as for the church that we left. They're ready to move on. They're ready for some new energies, and we are as well. Sometimes that's the case too. Jeff, let's move on to the next question. You ready?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. This guy wants to know about some help with a resume. How do you prepare a preaching resume? Resumes have changed a lot through the years. I imagine that for preachers as well. How do you do it?
Well, I think that's a great question because it's kind of in line with moving. If you're going to move, you need a resume, and so I think there are a lot of different ways to go about that. You can ask other people. If you've never done a resume, you can ask people who have. Let me see your resume, and I would encourage a guy to, if he's maybe doing a resume, he's never done one, or he's doing one he hadn't done in 15 or 20 years, to grab some current resumes of some people who maybe recently moved and get 5 or 10 of them and compare and get all the best ideas from them. And of course, there are online resumes where you can just fill in the blanks, but probably not so much for ministry as in other positions. And so ministry is a very unique position, and even a resume when it comes to ministry requires some unique kind of answers to be given. So the best thing in that would be to get other ideas from other people who have maybe recently done a resume.
2 things come to the front of my mind. One is, obviously, and this goes without saying, but we'll say it anyway, be honest, be thoroughly honest. Don't pad your resume. If you're young, they'll know you're young. You don't have to put on, I was on the moon, in 2004 or something like that. Just be totally honest about it. And the second thing, and this one is probably as important as anything, when you're done with it, get a professional to proof it for you. Yes. Go to your local community college, send it to somebody that is expert in grammar. And this is not to say you can't do it. It's just near to impossible to proof your own material. It's not saying you made mistakes, even though you might realize you sometimes do. It's more to say that if you get somebody else's eyes on it, they're going to spot some things that you won't spot.
Yeah, and even along that line, not only somebody who knows grammar and all of the things that go with that, but get another preacher to look at it, mm-hmm. who you trust. Maybe not so much for grammar, but just for content. And is there anything I left out of this? Is there anything I need to include? Is there too much here or not enough there? So
how many references, Jeff, and what are the references you need to put down?
Well, again, I would, determine if the church wants references. Some of them will not ask for references, and if they want them, you would need to include them. And I would include, I don't know how many, 5, 6, 8, 10, whatever you would think would be good. And
here's here's my thinking on that, Jeff. One is include somebody that you trust in the congregation you're at now. Okay. If your elders don't know you're moving and you put their name down as a reference, you may be moving before you plan on moving. So make sure it's somebody that you trust and that knows you're doing this as a reference. I'd also put down, one of your professors if you went to college somewhere, somebody that you looked up to and respected there, that had some belief in your abilities. And Jeff, in this day and time, where we have computer access, most of our guys listening will, they won't be listening if they don't, so I assume you have computer access. Don't prepare one resume. And by that I mean, if you know you're going to try out at 6th and 32nd Street Church, and you know they really respect Brother Smith. He's held 10 meetings there, and he's somebody they really, and he's a friend of yours or can vouch for you. If you know something about that church and somebody that they know about, if you can use that person as a reference, that will probably help you a whole lot.
Yeah. I had one time, Dale, church I left, the guy that was applying for the job asked me if he could include me as one of his references. And so I thought that's pretty good idea if that guy left on good terms.
That could hurt you a little bit, couldn't it?
Right.
Okay. Anything else you can think of on resumes? I'll mention one other thing. We've talked about, I think, in the past, a little thing called Fiverr.com, Fiverr.com. It's not a perfect site, and it has some things. It's not a Christian site. It has some stuff on that I don't like, but they'll do things for $5. And I noticed while I was looking at it one time, they will prepare a resume for you for $5, professional resume. There are guys out there that will do that, and that can be helpful to you.
All right. So you want to do one more, or is that?
Let's do one more if we can keep it kind of quick.
Okay, I'm looking at our list. We've got about 20 questions here, and I don't remember what the third one we said we were going to do. Do you know?
Well, I'll ask it then, and you can answer. That'll work better for my case. Okay. How do we get more people to teach, or how do we keep from pulling our hair out over it when we can't?
Well, if you can figure the answer to that question out, you need to write a book or start doing seminars, because you'll be asked to speak all over the country. For that, I think there are some kind of practical ways that come to my mind. First of all, we're going to have to do more teacher training. We've got to provide workshops and opportunities for people to teach. I think we've got to figure out a way in a local setting where it doesn't become so burdensome to somebody that they can't handle it. I'm not saying it needs to be no effort put forward, but if it becomes so burdensome that people can't do it, and one way to help with that is to, not ask somebody to teach 25 years in a row the third grade.
Yes, sir.
You need to have more people who can fill in, and you need to rotate. You need to swap out, and so make a commitment to the church that let's get more people involved so that we don't have to rely on the same person and burn people out as they go about teaching.
Just a few things I'd toss in and adding to that. Watch how you ask. If you make it sound like a burden when you ask, it's probably not going to go over very well. If you don't emphasize the special opportunity to teach children and the influence of that, and if you don't highlight teachers and ever commend them when you start asking for them, nobody's going to feel like it's a role they're going to want to be a part of. I'd say sign-up sheets are probably not the best way to go with teachers. Now, if it works for your congregation, it works for your congregation, but most places that doesn't seem to work. My experience is, and Jeff, you might comment on this, is that when the preacher asks you to do something, sometimes people will do things that they won't do for other people, whether that should be or shouldn't be. That's been my experience.
Well, because people like you. If you got a preacher they don't like and it's time for him to move,
that goes back to the first question.
Write a resume. He might not be the guy. But I think that's a valid point, that whoever that person is, it could be a certain elder who people love and respect, do whatever they ask him to do, or it could be a deacon, or it could be another Sunday school teacher. And another thing that comes to my mind.
It could be a woman. It could be a lady in the church that, is trying to get other, for children's classes, and this my guy comes up and asks her, and she says no, and one of her good sister comes up and says, we really need you, might respond better, especially with children's classes.
I think one wise thing, we're talking earlier about training teachers, is to get people who have never taught, maybe new Christians or new to the congregation, and get them to sit in on a class with a teacher who's experienced and learn from that person. And then, that person goes out of town, this person can step in. And so provide opportunities like that. And I want to make one caution very quickly that kind of is kind of gets under my skin a little bit. Don't get up and make announcements publicly that are negative. I get so tired of hearing somebody stand up and say, well, we've been asking for teachers for 3 months and we can't find anybody in this church to be a teacher. And not only does that lower the morale of the congregation, but that's terrible for visitors, prospective members, to hear something like that. So don't air out the problems of a congregation, whether it's in this area or any other area. Public.
That's great. And I would say something you might be helpful as well is, if you ask people and everybody's saying no, start asking, why? Why is there a reason? And there may be a compelling reason why someone doesn't want to teach in a certain setting that you might be able to address and might be able to help with. And Jeff, I found this really, really helpful. We had problems. I don't know a church that at times doesn't go through periods of time when they have problems finding teachers. But we struggled with it for a while, and I went in and I taught all the children's classes. I started with the second and third graders, and I went to the first graders, and then I went to the kindergarten, and then I went to the preschool, and then I taught the cradle roll, and once a quarter I taught the third and fourth. I taught every child's class, and there were a couple of reasons behind it. One was I'd never taught children's classes before, and I've been up begging people to teach them all these years, and I'd never done it myself. But the residual effect of it was that we had people who wouldn't teach before that then suddenly thought, well, I can do that. And it made it attractive. And I had a newfound appreciation, Jeff, for those people that teach first graders.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's just a thought.
Yeah, that's great.
All right. Great day, isn't it? Let's wrap this thing up.
Well, it's great to be with you, Dale. And again, we want to thank those who are watching and those who will watch later on, and remind you, if you have a question about ministry, send it to
the Jenkins Institute at gmail.com, and we'll be happy to answer those questions and to take the time to answer those as soon as we can. And we'll try to do these, maybe, Jeff, a little more often in the days ahead.
All right. Have a great day.